having just as much fun this afternoon. A couple more door prizes at afternoon break. But right now, we're going to go ahead and get started with our 1 o'clock session, which is generational differences in the workforce. Hannah Schuyler is our presenter for this, and she's an outpatient coder from Central Florida Health, which owns and operates both the Leesburg Regional Medical Center and the Villages Regional Medical Center in Lake County. She's worked there for over 3 years now and serves as the chair of the LRMC, which I guess that's Leesburg Regional Medical Center Employee Engagement Council. Previously, Hannah worked at Monroe Regional Medical Center in Marion County, and where she worked as a member on the imaging and coding teams. Hannah is a member of Gulf Coast NEFHIMA as well. So please join me in welcoming Hannah Schuyler.
Good afternoon, everyone. All right, I don't think I have to have a mic, do I? I talk pretty loud as it is, but if you guys want me to, I can use the mic. You guys okay in the back? Yeah. All right, cool. Okay, so kind of give you guys a history. I started working in a medical records office in a hospital when I was just 21 years old, and I was still in college at the time too. And so I faced a lot of, let's just say, adversity because of my age. And my coworkers would tell me, "Oh, well, I have a daughter your age. You could be my granddaughter. You know, I have grandkids older than you." Okay, I got that. And so I felt like I was pushed into a corner, and I wasn't always able to really get to contribute what I knew and what I could do and to help them. And I was pretty much, I don't want to say abused, but looked down upon because of my age. You know, you don't know what you're doing. I've been in this business for 20,000 years, you know. Yes, I get it, I know. But I want you guys, and I want this to be interactive for you guys too, okay? Don't be afraid to talk to me, okay? Ask questions, make comments. I'm going to be the first to tell you I don't know everything. And so you might know something about a generation that I don't know of, okay? But I want you guys to think, I'm going to say a phrase, and I want you to kind of think about what the words mean to you, and I'll get back to that second. But I'm going to say this. My name is Hannah, and I am a millennial. Uh-oh. Generation X. Generation Z. Not me. But it was probably negative, wasn't it? Yeah. I've heard it all before. You're lazy. You're narcissistic. You still live with your parents. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
By the way, I'm a millennial.
Yeah, we have some. And so, because of that discrimination and those, what we perceive as stereotypical qualities, I want to break those barriers. Because not all millennials are like that. You know, a lot of millennials, whether you guys realize it or not, are having to work 2 jobs now just to make ends meet. Whereas their predecessors, their parents, like the baby boomers or the silent generation or even Generation X, they could get by on 1 income. Not millennials. We'll get into that later, but looking at, I'm just going to focus on these. Of course, we have a generation, actually 2 generations older than the builders. But if you're brave enough, do we have any builders or maturists or traditionalists in here? You're 71 and older? Okay, there we go. Hey, it's okay. So do we have any baby boomers in here? Represent. There you go.
Silver table.
Do we have Generation X in the house? There you go. Okay, where's my millennials at? Yes. And I'm hoping we have a Generation Z in here, do we? Do we have anyone that's 21?
The little girl that was here a minute ago.
Okay. Yep. And if anyone's pregnant, you have Generation Alpha. newest generation. You see how this is going? X, Y, Z, then Alpha. We're starting the alphabet again. It's really interesting. Okay. So what are some of the current generations in the workforce now? Well, we have what are called the builders. They have a lot of different names. The veterans, maturists, or traditionalists. We have the baby boomers. We have Generation X. We have Generation Y, or commonly known as the Millennials. And we have Generation Z, or iGen. Do you know why they're called iGen? iPhones, Apple, iPad, everything like that. So that's how they got that name of Generation iGen. There's my Generation Z. I missed one. All right, so after we have Generation Z, so you're wondering, okay, what about Generation Alpha? Well, we're predicting right now the beginning is 2010 and roughly ending around 2030. So generations typically span about 20 years, give and take. What we know about them is about 2.5 million are born globally every week. They're projected to be one of the largest generations in the world. They only notice diversity when it's missing. I think that's really profound for this generation. And while millennials are considered to be the most educated generation in U.S. history, Generation Alpha is going to trump us. They're going to be even more educated than we are. They're more diplomatic, and here's a sad fact about them. They're lonelier and more anxious. Why is that?
Because they don't interact with nobody. But technology. Yeah, but see, we got outside in the dirt and played balls and jumping.
So what we're seeing about them also is that they're the most technological, literate, and socially empowered generation to date. Think about what these kids are growing up in right now. And that's what's shaping that generation. We also see that at a younger age, and thus will have even more influence on their parental spending. These kids don't even have a chance to build credit, and they're already affecting the U.S. U.S. economy because they're pressuring their parents to buy certain products. And so consumers and marketing and everyone else is really focusing on Generation Alpha right now. So it's really something to look out, in the future with them. So, we're going to break it down a little bit. Everyone believes that the baby boomers is the largest United States generation in history. They're not. Millennials outbeat them by 12.1 million, making them currently the largest generation in U.S. history. So, I thought that was really interesting with them. So, in 10 to 20 years from now, the United States will have 6 or more different generations in the workforce. Now, why do we say 6 or more? Why do we keep adding to that?
Living longer, and working longer.
Advancements in medicine. And so, really, companies need to start taking attention to these generations because, let's face it, in healthcare alone, we treat from 0 to death, don't we? And so we have to really work with every generation there is. So you have to really start when you're in the hiring processes, when you're looking at students, and that's why I feel so passionate about going to middle school career days and to high school career days and talking to the future people who are going to be running NEFHIMA or running my medical records office because they are the future. So I really want you guys to start paying attention a little bit more to that. Now, what's really interesting about this, and this is from the U.S. Census Bureau, and so in 2017, we're seeing the percentages for the world of the working age, and currently we're sitting at 4.9 billion people within their working age. Now, what's interesting, 20 years into the future now, we're seeing some shifts, aren't we? We're seeing where Asia is 61.6%, but then they drop down to 58%. Africa taking the largest growth in the next 20 years. Do you know why Africa is growing at such an exponential thing?
Because all the different stuff they got going on in the medical field over there.
Not only that, yes, due to technologies coming in, manufacturing's coming in, people are, infant rates are going down, the deaths of them, and they're calling Africa the new India. So it's really something you guys need to start looking out for. Instead of outsourcing to India here in the future, you might have to look at Africa. So they're really starting to jumpstart their economy. They're really starting to go at everything. So that's something you guys need to start paying attention to. Because they've even into the Asian, from 61 to 58, and that's pretty significant. And from 14.1 to 20%, that's a 6% difference almost. So be on the lookout for that as well. So I like this one just because it's by the U.S. labor force, but you can also see the trends and the ups and downs that each generation has made over the last few years. So unfortunately we see and we know the silent generation, they were at probably about 23 million, and so you see over the course of the years it goes down, and so they're at about 3.7. It's actually a little lower now in 2018, but then you see Generation X, they're pretty mainstream. They're leveling out right now. We see the boomer generation, and where their height was about 65 million, we're heading down to 44.6% million, I should say. And then we see the incline of what we call the Millennials, and so from 1995 and then up, and we're holding steady at 53.5 million. So it's a really cool little graph to show everything. So where do generational personalities come from? Well, pure influences. You have politics, parenting styles, media, education, world events, religion figures, war and peace, family, technology, and values. What are maybe some other ones that we can add to that list? Okay, good, it was a test. Community pressure. Right, it is a test. I'm going to see, because I was trying to add stuff to it, so I always see what you guys think I could add to it. So here's a really great one also. And the first thing for education is what blew me away. For a traditionalist or a builder or from that generation, education is a dream. A baby boomer, it's a birthright. Education for a Generation X is a way to get there. And for a millennial, it's a great expense. Look how that has changed. It's mind-boggling to me.
On the boomers, a birthright, it depends on where your parents were from.
That too, absolutely. You look at the baby boomers, parents and grandparents. We have what's called the greatest generation, and that was really from, I think 1890 to 1915, give and take. And we saw a lot of immigration coming in at that time, and it was, for the traditionalists, their children, it was a dream to have that education, to be here in America and to do everything. And then the children of them, the baby boomers, they're like, well, I'm here, it's a birthright. I have to, I'm going to get that education. So I find it really interesting. And even if you look at their work ethic, how much it is. Traditionalists, they're dedicated and you pay your dues. You're there, you're a plumber, you're going to pay your dues. That's your job until you die. That's how they perceive jobs. You see in work ethic for a boomer, they're driven and they're workaholics. That's why we're seeing that they're staying in the workforce longer and longer. You guys are workaholics.
We can't afford to quit.
I'm getting to that too, yeah. So and we see generation
we have the millennials that we have to pay the incredible expense for.
that too. But the work ethic for them, for Generation X, is that they like to have balance. They work smarter with a greater output. And as we know, Generation X is known as the middle child. Because unfortunately, they're between baby boomers and millennials, and they have to be that middle child in there, in the mix. So we see with millennials is that we're ambitious, and I put this, and I love this because it says we're done at 5. Why do you think they put that in there?
Go home.
They're going to work like
They want the work-life balance that their boomer parents didn't have. I want to be home for my kids, unlike my mom.
Well, the one reason why I think they put this in here is because one thing that we understand from the millennials is that because we have other stuff that we have to get done. We do our time. We hope it's flexible. We can work from home, work on, a laptop or whatever. But when our 8 hours or whenever is done, we're done. We have other stuff that we have to move on to. So that's why they put it in there. So, and it's true. It really is. I promise. So, let's look at this. Also, preferred work environment. Traditionalists like to be conservative. They're top-down management in their styles. We see that boomers have kind of like a flat hierarchy. They're very democratic, but they're warm and friendly as well. That's what I really love about the boomer generation. And don't get me wrong, I don't want this to be about bashing other generations in this presentation, because the more and more I research about different generations, I find out how absolutely amazing they all are. They really are. I mean, yeah, there are pros and cons to every generation, okay? So, but when we look at everything on here, we just see how much we're alike and how much we're different. I mean, even looking at preferred work environment, when we go from conservative to flat, to function and positive, to collaborative and creative and diverse. So I think it's really a great representation for you guys to see the snapshot of the differences. Okay? So looking at, for the last few years, we see there's been some changes. We see in 1995, the boomers held 49% of the workforce. Now we're seeing in 2015, they're down to 29%. And then we see, we're predicting in 2025 that they will still hold 8%, which is still greatly significant than the silent generation and the traditionalists who kind of went about at 2%. And like I said, you have to work longer. You have to stay in that job. So that's why they're still at that 8%. We see that Generation X in 1995 was at 31. We see that in 2015, they went up to 34. And we see in 2025, they're at 28%. Do you notice any other trends with it?
They didn't change that much.
Right.
They didn't change. I mean, why did it not go up? Yeah, why didn't, in 2015, Generation X, why didn't it move from 30 to 50%?
Because Generation X is responsible for, and as you guys know, you have aging parents. So Generation X is showing a lot of stuff right now where they're going in and out of the job force to take care of parents. And so that's why we're seeing greater fluxes of different things with these.
Yeah, they're going home care.
That too. So this is kind of breaking it down a little bit more by age for every 4-year segments. So we can see that Generation Z right here, they're just starting out. These are the kids that are working at Publix, picking up shopping carts and doing college internships and like first entry jobs. And then we can see in the millennials per million how many are in the workforce right now, how many in Generation X and baby boomers, and at the very end we see the silent generation at 0.7, still in the workforce. So just to kind of show you the graph on how it's going. Okay, so I like this one. It's a lot to go over, but I really prefer you guys to really print out the papers and look at it a lot so we don't have a whole lot of time. But we see right now for 2017, the last quarter, the maturist or silent or builder generation, they're holding at about 1% or less. We see that baby boomers now hold 26%. Generation X has 31. Millennials have 34. And Generation Z is holding at 8. So that's our current percentages right now in the U.S. workforce. Now, one thing I like about this graph is the aspirations per these generations. For a maturist, it was home ownership. For baby boomers, it was job security. Generation X, it's work-life balance. Millennials, we look for flexibility and freedom. And what we're looking at for Generation Z right now, starting out, is they want security and stability. Pretty profound, huh? How that's changed. And we also see the attitude toward technology. Let's face it, the maturest, largely disengaged. I mean, even my grandmothers, when they were alive, would not touch a computer to save their lives. But then I have a great uncle who is 98 years old, and he has the newer iPhone than I do. And he likes to brag about it. So just because you're part of that generation doesn't mean that you hold those, traits, I'll say. We also see the baby boomers. You're the early information adapters. I mean, for Pete's sakes, you guys were the start of Woodstock and rock and roll. I mean, come on. We also see with Generation X, and I like this because we're starting to see this. They're loyal to the profession, but not necessarily to the employer.
Amen.
So Generation X is the starters of job hopping, not millennials. Okay? And we also see with millennials is that we're digital entrepreneurs, and we work with organizations, not for organizations. That's the general attitude. And we also see with Generation Z that they're multitaskers. They go seamlessly in between pop-up businesses and their other jobs. So, they're making money off of YouTube, or when Vines were still really big, and they're doing Snapchat because they're making money off of that. And doing other things that are considered pop-up and different things to do income. So we also see, and I'll tell you guys to go through this later when you print it out, it's the communication media, communication preference, and preference when making financial decisions. And I like this one because we're seeing copying. As you can see underneath here under maturist, we prefer face-to-face. But so do millennials. Whereas the two generations in between them, face-to-face ideally, but will increasingly go online for it. Whereas Generation X, they would be online, but they would prefer face-to-face if time permitting. So I think it's really interesting that we're seeing face-to-face and face-to-face, and then the two kind of going together. So, the healthcare industry, we're going to face workforce shortages due to aging employees. We all know this. We know as the baby boomers are starting to go into retirement, we're going to have to start hiring again in more and more positions. More patients are living longer due to new treatments and technology. We kind of already went over that. This patient and workforce population shift will create a generational gap in between older patients and the younger care providers, impacting care delivered in hospitals. We've seen this probably going through the floors. We're seeing an RN who's, say, 27, and she's trying to tell a 98-year-old man about his medications and what he has to do. It takes a little longer. And to understand that generational differences between the two, because if that nurse who was talking to a Generation X would be like, okay, you can go online, you can get your medical records here, blah, 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 and it's quick and easy for the most part. But when she's dealing with that 98-year-old, okay, this is the address. You have to spell everything out for them, don't you? You have to take that extra time and care because they need extra help. So, building a stronger generation foundation. I cannot stress this enough, okay? Conduct an evaluation to determine your organization's workforce profile. It is absolutely essential to know which generations and how many employees from each group that are in your organization to forecast future workforce needs and develop a comprehensive plan that addresses generational risk. Also, acquired talent. I mean, attracting generationally balanced workforce will enhance your organization's talent pool and provide a competitive edge. And we're seeing that a lot. I mean, look at Google and Apple. Who are they going for? You can talk, it's okay.
The teeny boppers.
Yeah, so they're trying to, again, it's their talent pool, they're trying to get things done. And they're offering services that you're not used to seeing. I mean, Apple, for Pete's sakes, has napping pods. for their employees. I would love to have one of those. But in healthcare, we have to be a little different. We're held to a higher standard within the industries, aren't we? I mean, and let's be honest, we can't have just the weekends off. We can't leave a peanut butter sandwich and a glass of water at that bedside and say, well, Mr. Smith, I'll see you on Monday. Good luck. No, we can't do that. So, and we're seeing it with problems with, especially with nursing. I mean, nursing really has to be on the, the floors and 12-hour shifts and everything. They can't really have a work-balance life and flexible schedule. So those are some of the really big things that healthcare is looking at right now. How do we combat with that and be competitive? Yes?
You also have to add cultural differences in our
Absolutely.
because that really affects us as well.
Absolutely. And that'll be like another presentation down the road. But also, high turnover rates are expensive in terms of re-improvement, training costs, and the loss of an organizational knowledge. I mean, you're getting in that nurse, you train her for, let's say it takes, I think they say like 3 years to fully train a nurse. And so you put all this time in for a nurse, you do everything you're supposed to, and then, boosh, gone. So now you're back at step one again of hiring someone, training another person. So there's a lot of problems with turnover rates, especially with job hopping with Generation X and Millennials, and we're starting to see a little bit in Generation Z, but we'll get into that in just a little bit. Okay, so how do we bridge some of these differences? Well, one is to create diverse teams. And as she said before, I am the chair for the engagement council for my hospital. And so my team is comprised of from nurses to CNAs to environmental services to therapists to pharmacists, and we're all different ages. And so we've created this to kind of help not only with engagement, but also to work with generational differences in my work that I do. Understand individual motivators, and we'll go over that in just a little bit because motivation is different for everybody, of course. Consider practicality. You can't please everybody. Sometimes it's not always going to work. Oop, I hit a button. Okay. Change workstations. We're seeing with Generation X even, with Millennials and Generation Z, that they do not like being put into the cubicle farm. No. No. But we have to be respectful for our baby boomers and everyone else because that's what they prefer. So if you have a chance, change up stuff if you can. If budget also permits. I mean, you have to understand practicality as well. You can't go blow your entire budget for the year on, stand-up desk and beanbag chairs and laptops. It's not going to work. Encourage communication and feedback, always. Always encourage that. And practice reverse mentoring. And that's something I've started in my own office with the coders. When let's say my baby boomer partner that's a few cubicles away from me is having problems with her computer, I'll get up and help her. And then she'll teach me about disease process and coding and the history of coding because I don't know that yet. And so she's able to teach me while I teach her how to use her computer and to do things. Can you think of some other ways we could do reverse mentoring?
Any area.
Huh?
Any area.
Any area.
I mean,
Absolutely.
I worked in a nursing home once before, and I would teach them computer skills, things like files and everything about computers.
Yeah.
And they would teach me how to handle the medical record. At that time, it was before I was in medical records. I was
Right.
even before transcription.
So one of the things going on for me right now is that I'm in the process of buying a home. And oh my goodness. And so while I'm able to help my baby boomer coworkers with their technology and their cell phones and everything, they're teaching me about PMI insurance. They're teaching me about what I need to have in homeowners insurance and everything. So there's a relationship going back and forth with us, and I think only it's helping our teamwork even more.
And one of the things that we focus a lot in our program is, and this is very much generational, is communication.
Absolutely.
The different styles of communication, whether it's written or on the presentation skills, there's a big gap. on,
Yeah.
here, I could do this in 3 words that are 3 letters or less, and you have to put in all these bullet point type things. So that gap can definitely be mentored and co-mentored back and forth.
Absolutely, absolutely. Anything else?
Email writing, texting.
Yeah, absolutely. And we go into a lot of stuff, and I might sound like an ophobia, I don't know, but I constantly have to get on to my Generation Z coworkers. Because they're with the cell phone, they're like, take a selfie, and I'm like, what's in your background? Is there personal information on there? That's a no-no.
That's just your headline.
Yeah, it is. It is, but it's a learning thing, and again, it goes to reverse mentoring for me, even to them. Because when I had to get onto Snapchat, and I'm like, okay, I'm a millennial, I should know how to do this, but I don't. How do I do this?
You just Snapchatted PHI, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
One of the things that is a negative to reverse mentoring is when you get into the need to know.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's a fine line too,
Yeah.
as it is. Absolutely. And like I said, there's always pros and cons to everything. So, okay. So what are some communication tools that you can use with baby boomers? Well, they like to meet face to face or by phone. And honestly, showing personal appreciation to a baby boomer goes a long way. Treat them as equals. Be democratic, not bureaucratic. And actually saying the phrase, we need you. Okay? Include them in matters. There's nothing more that aggravates a baby boomer than being left out in the dark. Right? Does that aggravate you a little bit? Hear their input and offer flexible work schedules, because we have to look at baby boomers right now. They're taking care of their parents, aren't they? And so sometimes that's going to have to demand some flexible schedule to get them to the doctor and do whatever they need to get done. And also leverage their knowledge. They are a wealth of information. They really are. And value teamwork with them. We see for Generation X, communicate by voicemail or email. And you have to understand about Generation X is that they're like the baby boomers, they're workaholics, but they like to be fast and efficient. But they also like to be rewarded with free time opportunities. That goes a long way in communicating and motivating a Generation X. Support training and growth, and give them freedom. And it kind of goes along with micromanagement. You try to micromanage a Generation Xer, they're going to shut down on you in a hot minute, aren't they? And for Generation X, is to provide them with the latest technology. Because remember what I said before? They like to work smarter and more efficient. So when they can adapt and get to this new technology, they can get their work done more. Because they have a more global mindset. They're like, boom, 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 get it done. And then make it fun. And value diversity with them.
Go Generation X.
So for Millennials and Generation Y, the use of text messaging and instant messaging. And sadly enough, we like awards. That little piece of paper does mean something to us, as corny as that sounds. But if you really want to motivate your Millennials, go to Office Depot and get some award paper. I'm serious.
The mini trophies you can get 100 for $10, those work too.
Yeah. And we're seeing with the Millennials, the way we've grown up is we like to have mentors. And so I really encourage you guys to coach and support them. Provide flexibility, be, again, motivational. Care about their personal goals, promote volunteerism, and value their technical savvy. Okay, so here's where we get a little tricky. How can job hopping be harmful? Uh-oh. Yeah. I get asked this all the time because I'm one of the few Millennials in my office, and they're like, what can we do? Okay. So, employers will be hesitant to invest in you. Your job may be less secure. They will fear that you will leave at first sign of trouble, And moving to job not only hurts you, but it hurts the company as well. And I should have added, it hurts the patients as well. It really does. And when you look at it, it takes quite a bit to train a new employee, even in the HIM field, and it's not good for anybody, let's be honest. So it's something that I think as not only an industry, but as the United States and everyone else, we need to be more proactive about preventing this, for sure. Now, another question I get all the time is how to retrain millennials. My first one, pay them. Not only, like I've said before, it's okay, I can talk over. Millennials are the most educated generation in U.S. history. But did you know that only 36% of millennials with college degrees have jobs that pay them at least $45,000 a year? That is statistically and especially troubling in light of the fact that it reflects a major decline in wages over the past 2 decades. And if you really can't afford to pay the increase, look for other ways of rewarding their efforts. Certificates. Yes.
That's one of the reasons why they job hop.
That also, yes. And we'll get into a little bit more. Respect their vacation time. This country is due for a long dialogue on the importance of vacation time.
Yes, it is.
It might be just the best thing for a corporation to do. Studies show that giving the brain enough downtime is critical to allowing it to process all the information it's taken in and map out ideas for the future. It's no surprise that our best ideas come to us when we're doing absolutely nothing. Okay? Also, compensate for growth. Know that your employees are looking for jobs elsewhere if you're not helping them grow. In fact, the number one reason millennials leave their organization and workforce around them is a lack of career growth opportunities. It really is. And that's where we go back more into that mentoring and different other things with them. And know that their title counts. As cheesy as that sounds. Right here. The titles you give your millennial employees are an important reflection. We live in a world where resumes matter. Employers know that if the title sounds absurd, their options for future employment may be too. It may not matter to you while you're in a bind to post a job and not sure what to call it, but it matters for the recipient. So, something to think about. So what are we seeing from millennials to Generation Z right now? Well, look at the first one. From 66% to 54%, the dislike of multitasking. Okay. We see 68% to 59% is the descent into work that's fast-paced environments. We're also seeing that they're actually, from millennials to Generation Z, that they're more interested in advancement at a company. Because let's look at them. Look at what they were looking for, security and stability, weren't they? Yep. We also see that Generation Z is less motivated by money to stay in their company versus a millennial. Why do you think that is? Stability. Absolutely. And no surprise here, and I think this holds true for everyone, from 56% to 61%, that they want their manager to listen and to value their ideas. And also we're seeing an increase from 58 to 61 that they enjoy working independently. And we're actually seeing that, I think it was like in Times Magazine or Forbes or something, is that millennials are starting to push the more work at home things and they like working independently. And we're seeing that's getting even more and more in Generation X right now. So, basically the main point of everything is that in the end, your generation does not ultimately define you, but how you interpret your unique place within it. Presume that you and your coworkers and your subordinates are more alike than different. And aim to learn more about your colleagues instead of accepting generational stereotypes. Do we have any further discussion, questions? No? Making my job kind of easy. Scary. But I get hurt. All right, thanks everybody.
Thank you.
Good job.